7 months ago, my life took a really drastic turn. And since then, I've been on a really big roller coaster of recovery, emotionally, physically, and mentally. And today, we're at a big milestone, a surgery that can finally fix my arm. And it's been a really long road to get here, filled with challenges, small victories, and more waiting rooms than I ever cared to see again. But today, I'm sharing the journey with you. The laughs, the frustrations, and everything in between. So let's get into it. We started the trip the way most families do, with Leandra packing half the house. I joked that she was preparing for a month-long adventure, but in reality, we were only going for a few days.
The essentials.
Getting the car all packed up, my anxiety's high.
I think it's just the nerves of knowing what's about to happen.
I leaned into the car and saw the battery at 99%. I muttered,
"That should be enough."
And we hit the road. Little did I know how much that phrase would sum up the trip. Road trips with Leandra are never dull. At one point, I decided to see how autopilot would handle me pretending to fall asleep. Of course, the car wasn't having it, and it immediately warned me to pay attention. Don't worry, it was all in good fun. We made several stops at Tesla superchargers along the way. I got out to stretch while Leandra soaked up the sun. It was one of those moments where you're reminded to just pause and breathe, even if it's only for a few minutes. By the time that we had rolled into San Antonio that night, the weight of what was coming was starting to hit me.
Almost there.
This surgery wasn't like the others. Back then, the need was obvious. Feeling the anxiety start to increase, but this time, there was a lot more time to think about the what ifs. I think it's forcibly being put out and then knowing that you're going to wake up with something totally different.
You have a lot more time to think about it now than you did when it was an accident, right?
Immediately, you're just kind of forced into this go with the flow thing. You don't really see it coming. You don't have time to think about it. At that point, something has to be done. Your neck, back, pelvis shattered, bones sticking out. Something obviously has to be done. So there's no questioning whether you proceed or not. I should be hearing the surgeons pointing out your bone is not healing. Still, the anxiety will lead me to wonder, is this really something I need? And it's so obvious. There's a screw pushing out on my skin and a gap where the bone has not healed where by this time it absolutely should have. But before we headed back to the hotel, we stopped at a place called La Paloma Blanca, which was recommended by our friend Dr. Miller. He'd been hyping it up, and he sent me a text saying, "If you don't like it, send me the check." Well, buddy, you're safe. The food was amazing, especially the ceviche. Leandra even said it was the best she's ever had, and I'm pretty sure we were grinning throughout the entire meal. Not bad for an early anniversary dinner.
All right, gotta get to bed. Leandra's already asleep. Might be a trick for me to fall asleep early morning. See you then.
4:30 a.m. came faster than expected.
Good morning, Lila. Let's see the arm before the big procedure. That inside part looks really good. I was so surprised. How's your throat?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I do have a throat.
Yeah, I do. It's 4 o'clock in the morning, which is actually 3 o'clock in the morning back home. So,
Oh, yeah, huh?
how are you feeling?
I'm feeling good. It feels like I have been sentenced to death. I feel what my final meal is.
But they told you you can't eat.
I've rehearsed the walk to the gas chamber many times in my head.
But everything's gonna be great.
Thanks. Kiss.
The hospital was eerily quiet when we arrived.
Wow, what do you think?
We had to go through the emergency room entrance just to find our way to the surgical department. While we waited, Leandra and I found a little corner of the waiting room where we just sat quietly. These are the moments that remind me how strong she is, how much she's carried me through all of this. When it was time to change into the surgical gown, I made my usual jokes with the nurses, something about wishing I could skip straight to recovery.
There you are.
But the reality of what was coming started sinking in. But I knew I was in good hands. The surgery took 5 hours. And from what I learned later, it wasn't exactly simple. Dr. Dutta had described it as an archaeological dig.
As you can see, we've reconstructed the lateral column with an iliac crest bone graft. There's the radial head articulating with what we believe is the residual lateral column. LUCL is attached here, which will be stabilized upon closure. On the medial side, you can see all the nerves have been neuralized. Medial column has been reconstructed. And again, stable humerus. Thank you.
They removed all of the old hardware, added a bone graft from my hip, and installed parallel plates to stabilize my elbow. After surgery, they wheeled me off to X-ray.
Surgery went a lot longer than anticipated. It was going to be 3 to 8 hours.
Yes.
It's 5.5 hours, right?
It's 5.
6.5. Sounds bad.
5.5.
I'm very happy to be on the other side of the surgery, though. Leandra will tell you that the surgeon made a comment about it being the last arm surgery.
Potentially, so long as your bone heals, yes.
I never talk to my viewers without them seeing your beautiful face.
I spoke to Dr. Dutta after the procedure was done, and he was very pleased with how everything went. And he said that so long as the bone heals as it should, this could be his last surgery on his arm.
It's still strange seeing all of that hardware inside of my arm, and it's kind of like something you'd find in a Home Depot aisle. Unfortunately, the X-ray tech had a really good sense of humor.
Can you X-ray my private parts? Not for free. If you X-rayed it, half would grow. Oh, it's a shrink, right? No.
Moments like that make the tough times feel a little bit lighter. The first night after surgery was something that I'll never forget, and not in a good way. Around 11:30 p.m. on that first night, the pain block had started to wear off, and the pain hit me like a sledgehammer. It started as this crushing pain, like an elephant was stepping down on my arm. And then as time passed, it changed to a stabbing pain, as if a dagger had been stuck into the nerve that runs down my bicep. No amount of medication seemed to help at all. I had told Leandra, I can't do this, and she just kept saying, yes, you can. And I didn't believe her at the time, but somehow, hour by hour, I made it to sunrise. And when the first light came through the window, the pain finally started to ease. The next day, the physical and occupational therapist came by to get me moving. Standing up for the first time after surgery was rough. I felt like my body was arguing with me every step of the way. But even those small steps felt like victories. Dr. Dutta stopped by to check on me and explain what he'd done in the surgery.
There's the lateral plate. There's the medial plate. These are the screws crossing where you had an heel there. You got long screws across this gap. This is the bone graft. This is that wedge there. If you compare before, what we tried to address was this is all there where the wedge is at. Represents the lateral deficiency. This just hadn't healed. I mean, it looks like it's solid coming through here.
He has this way of breaking things down that makes even the most complicated procedures make sense.
You've been like, 2 horses, and one horse has nothing, and the other horse is doing all the work, and it's exhausted and it hasn't sealed itself. So we got the good horse that was almost healed, you're trying its best, super tight. And then the bad horse, we put it back on the stage carriage. It wasn't even connected. It was just sitting out there floating. So now it's connected. And then we're going to just start working on motion in a week down there in El Paso. Planning on having a full normal elbow. Never come back again. That's my current plan. I'm not into pain. I'm not like a Marine County sergeant. I believe in modified pain, but not ridiculous amounts. And if you work it through too much pain, you're not giving your body a chance to talk back to you, which is, you're an athlete, so you have to have some kind of biofeedback. What's more important is consistency. Right now, I want you to walk. I want you to be active. All the things that make life good. Second thing is right now, I want you in that split to start pretending like you can start working it, including your hand, your wrist, and I want you to start turning your wrist, pronation and supination. That'll give the joint nourishment, and that gives the cartilage nutrition. So I'll let that go in right now, pretty aggressively, and specifically, I can tell you're pronated. I want you to get that supination going right now. So that's the first thing and then start doing some wrist curls with that palm up. And then in that position, see if you can do a little bit of motion in the split. Now, even though it's locked in, there is a little bit of motion available in that split, right? You can do a little bit of extension too. That's what we want to get going. So the biceps and the triceps are already firing. We're doing wrist exercises, pronation, supination, biceps and triceps isometric exercises to get tone, get the edema out of the arm. Shoulder movement is tolerant. I'm excited. I want you to be excited about it. I'm sorry about the pain, but I figured the first day was going to be miserable. But anything less than this would have been inadequate.
Considering how this operation went 2 hours longer than initially expected, I asked Dr. Dutta what the biggest challenge of this operation was.
The hardest thing by far was trying to, do like a archaeology expedition to find that old position. We just couldn't figure it out for a bit because it didn't make any sense. So we had to get the arc adequate to get the full piston effect. If it doesn't get it, we can go back and clean it up, but we can't get it back later very easily.
I went on to ask Dr. Dutta if there may be a less invasive operation in the future that may further increase my range of motion.
Yeah. Scope it and put a camera in there and you can clean it out and get some more motion. I do that all the time. Scar tissue I can address later. We get some scar tissue. Don't beat yourself up about it. Try your best. Try really hard. It's better to do it in the front end, but we can get some more motion later.
Hearing him talk gave me hope that maybe this would be the surgery to fix it. Even with everything going on, there were moments that made us laugh. One of the nurses sang this hilarious constipation song
I feel a poop coming.
that apparently she sings to all of her patients that have trouble going to the bathroom, and it really cheered me up.
Oh, thank you for that poop.
Give it a whiff.
Oh, I can feel that.
And then there was this EKG fiasco. A tech told me that they needed to shave spots on my chest for the leads. So I just suggested Leandra shave the whole thing to avoid looking patchy. And she did. And then, as soon as Leandra finished shaving my chest, the techs came back in and said, actually, we don't need the EKG anymore. So now I'm freshly shaved for no reason at all. This surgery was one of the hardest things that I've ever had to go through, but it feels like we've finally turned the corner. Recovery won't be quick, and it won't be easy, but I've learned to appreciate every small step forward. That's what this journey is all about. Showing up, putting in the work, and trusting that eventually it'll all pay off. Thank you to everyone who's been following along and supporting me through this. And if you've made it this far, I hope you'll stick around for the next follow-up video. The road ahead is long, but step by step, we'll get there.